let's go on to the next chapter, which is Pune City FC. You became a technical director over there. So, what was your role? How did your role change, and how did you approach the club over there?
Initially, after leaving BFC in 2016, I actually had a couple of offers from Delhi Dynamos in the ISL to work with them. And so the first season, I didn't want to jump straight. I needed a little bit of a break after 3 years at BFC. So I opted to help them in a recruitment side of it. So I helped bring in about half of the Indian players, the second half, like the likes of Sana Singh, Keen Lewis, Rupert, Milan Singh, and a couple of Sorum Pore. There's about 7 signings of young Indian lads into that squad, which Ambrata had, and they had a pretty good season after that. So that gave me a little taste of ISL and what it was like. So there were a couple of offers the following year, and between FC Goa, Pune, Kerala Blasters, and a couple of others. And Pune, I was impressed with the facilities that they had at their training ground. And they were pretty unsuccessful in the first 3 seasons, hadn't made the playoffs, spent a lot of money and done very little with it. So it was a good challenge to sort of take on to see what one could do with this club. So I wasn't going to just go in and be just an assistant coach with, I didn't even know who the head coach was going to be at the time. So I wanted a more longer role, especially because the leagues were shorter then. You got to think about what you're going to do in the rest of the year. So we had a half decent, they had a lot of young players at the club, a half decent under 18 team. And so you could do a lot of stuff in the entire football ecosystem of that club. So that's why the role of a technical director. So the first few months was working on that, the youth side of it, because there was no senior players. There was going to be a draft. So effectively, all the players you had last season, you just rip that up and you're starting from scratch because there's a draft. So we went. The youth team were doing well. Obviously, Pune standards. You're going to win the Pune league. That means nothing. We were in the under 18 I league. We got to the group stages in Calcutta. So you go and we played against Lajong, East Bengal, and I can't remember the other team the under 18s played against. And we lost to East Bengal. We beat Lajong and we beat the other team. And you could see which players you think, okay, he could be promoted to the senior team or he might be ready in a few years. And also you're looking at it relative to the opposition. You're looking at kids like Mehtab Singh at East Bengal, and a couple of other players, Liston Colasso at Slagauka, Edmund, and the AFF 11. So you're seeing a lot of these top talent for that age group in India, which is also important as a technical director. You've got an eye on what's coming up, not just in your club, but in the other clubs as well.
Yeah.
And then we chose to keep the boys in Calcutta after we lost and take part in the IFA Shield, which happened shortly after that. And the boys won the IFA Shield. We beat Mohun Bagan in the final. And again, you go there, you watch the likes of Deepak Tangri playing centre back for Mohun Bagan. So you're keeping an eye on a lot of what's happening. So when you're going into the draft now, okay, we've got these kids that we could promote. We've got some will probably be ready in a year. Some will probably be ready in 2 years. And you're starting to plan that way with your club. So when you go into the draft. So there's a lot of strategic planning for the draft. We picked up good players. We won, I think we qualified for the playoffs. It was the first time Pune, the only time they ever qualified. And the more interesting thing is what you do with those players that you can't promote to your senior team. They're no longer under 18 because they're now 18, 19. So we opted to loan a lot of these players out. So I think at one point I had 13 players out on loan in the I League or second division. Most of them in the I League, the likes of Gaurav Bora, Tarif Akund at Chennai City, and they go and win the league with them. Moirang and Bilal and a couple of others went to Gokulam. Sebastian and others, and Sebastian's now playing for Niroka. So we had pathways for these boys of how are you going to get from under 19 winning IFA Shield to the first team. It's not a straight line. For one or two players like Ashik, it's a straight line. For somebody like Yasir, it was go on loan to FC Goa, play in the Goa Pro League second division, get some minutes, and then come back. So you'd have to. Some of them were like Sahil, Abhishek Halder, Ashish Rai was go play with the Arrows. So we loaned them to the Indian Arrows with Floyd. So you know that they're playing under a good coach like Floyd, and then getting developed in the positions that you want them to play. Because sometimes if you loan them to other clubs, they might get played out of probably their best position. Like for example, a striker in an I League will end up like Gunny would end up being used as a winger at Gokulam. Whereas by going to the Arrows, you knew that Sahil Panwar will develop. It was Floyd's captain for him, so he got to play in the position and develop himself as a player. So those were the pathways you had to chart out for the youth, and it's great now to see a lot of them playing in the ISL. That even if it's not for one club, they've all managed to find their way as footballers. And you see the likes of Gaurav Bora starting, Ashish Rai, I think obviously Ashik, and loads of these kids now are all starting for different ISL clubs, and it's good to see the sort of progress of these kids.